a lot of times when we talk about burnout, we put the onus on the individual. Like, this is something you should be able to fix. This is something you should be able to manage. A lot of the work I do, I focus on what I call personal energy optimization, right? And I feel like there are these energy wells, these wells of energy that we have, everybody's got them, that we can nurture. You can't be at your best when your mental, your emotional, your physical, and your spiritual energies are not being nurtured properly. You know, there's studies that say that the person you report to has a greater impact on your health and well-being than even a lot of the things that we're talking about, because of the model and example that they set for you. Living in alignment, nurturing yourself, living that model so loudly that other people are influenced just merely by your presence and what they see you doing, and they want to get aligned and nurture themselves.
Hey, good morning, Well to Lead family. How you guys doing this morning? Hope all is well. Hey, listen, folks, we have a special guest in our studios this morning, Dr. Lynise Green, wellness specialist, leadership expert. Lynise, how you doing this morning?
I am doing well. How about you, Bobby?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So listen, before we dive into our discussion today, we want to talk, folks, to you guys today about work stress and burnout and trying to break that cycle before it breaks you. And Dr. Green is actually going to do, I'm sure she's going to deliver a wealth of information and knowledge to you guys today to kind of help in that regards. But before we get started, I would like for you to take a moment and just tell us more about yourself and kind of how you evolved into this wellness space.
I actually started my career as an engineer. My first degree is in mechanical engineering. And so I did that for quite a while. Large scale program management, software development, DoD contracts, like the whole 9 yards. I got into holistic medicine, into naturopathy, actually because I was on that fast track, climbing the ladder, all the things. And my grandmother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And during that time, we met a lady who was a naturopath, and we enlisted her services. And she just really opened my eyes to introducing me to the body's ability to heal itself through, food and rest and all the things. And I was just like, why don't other people know this information? Right. So took it upon myself to say, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. So I switched and went and got a doctorate in naturopathy and did postgraduate work in stress and nutrition. And then the leadership pivot really happened because I have experienced my own multiple moments of burning out and realized that, at the time I didn't really have the support or the resources to figure out how not to keep going through that cycle. And leaning into my holistic work, I figured it out. But then working in the corporate world, was just seeing so many of my colleagues, men and women, who were living through burnout and just didn't know what to do about it. Just had really normalized, like, this is the way it's supposed to be. So I kind of took all of my background and understanding that leadership life and, having the holistic background, and said, okay, we got to do something about this. So integrated the two, and here I am.
Oh, wow. It's interesting how, first of all, how you and I met, and it's interesting the path that you're on, because it's absolutely parallel to what I do here with Well to Lead program. And it was sort of birthed out of a crisis in terms of how I started, a personal crisis. And it evolved around the demands that professionals normally have, and some of those high stress jobs or industries. And I was a victim of that, to my own demise in some areas. I mean, just making bad choices, not taking time to keep balance in my life. And so I realized, just like you, that wellness is pivotal to success for professionals,
Mhm.
and that the work that you're doing. I'm so I read a lot about what you're doing right now and the people that you're impacting. And I'm glad that you're in this space. It's a very important space to be in, especially in these times. But what I'm interested in is, before we dive into the topic, I would like to maybe talk a little bit more, or for you to talk a little bit more about your engineering background, because you went from engineering to wellness, right? That's that's a that's a broad jump. So
It's a big jump.
yeah, yeah. If you could talk to us, Lynise, more about that, because I'm very interested to find out how did you make that transition and why. I mean, you told us a little bit about it, but maybe dive more into detail about that.
Yeah. So, again, like you, so much, probably like everybody, like, the choices we make are so driven by our personal experiences. And so, certainly my experience with my grandmother and the naturopath definitely influenced that. I think the other thing too was, and this is a lot of what I help people with in my work. I had gotten to a point where the engineering work, though it was, financially lucrative,
Right, right.
it was not fulfilling. It was really not fulfilling. And I just felt like I would go to work every day and a little piece of me was just dying every single
Yeah,
day. And that paycheck is a strong motivator, and
it is.
I can go one more day, and it really is, but I had gotten to the point where I was just miserable. I don't care how much, at some point money isn't the motivator anymore, and
Right.
I had really gotten to the point where I was just miserable going to work every single day. And so it just became clear that there was something else I needed to be doing that aligned more with me, who I was internally, as a person. And so, there was the jump. And it's funny, it seems like, it's a big jump from mechanical engineering to, naturopathy and holistic medicine. But interestingly, it wasn't, at least for me, because, mechanical engineering is all about systems
Right.
and how systems work. And really going into the holistic medicine, I could apply that same systems thinking to the body, because the body is a very complex but integrated system. And so being able to look, it really gave me a foundation for looking at people as a whole and not just, this part isn't doing what it needs to do. So, allopathic medicine says, oh, the part's not doing what it needs to do. Let's just take it out, right? But
Yeah.
as a system, you realize when you start pulling out things, it affects the entire system. So logically, the jump wasn't as crazy as it sounds. The engineering really gave me a foundation for looking at how things work together, and I just started applying that to the body instead of to people, instead of to inanimate machines and software systems. So
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. You're absolutely right as you explain it that way. I mean, certainly there are some parallels there and some crossover from that industry that you were able to leverage in what you're doing right now. How long have you been in the holistic medicine space? How long? So you were engineer for how long, and then how long have you actually been working in this holistic space?
yeah, now you're making me age myself, but it's all right. I'll do it for the whole public. So that's fine. Um, so I agree. It's all right. Look, hey, I take the aging right now over the
No.
alternatives. I am
Hey,
okay
that's
with
what I'm talking about, right?
uh,
That's a good thing.
that's right.
Okay.
I'm good with every day, every year that I get. I has no shame to my game. So
Amen to that.
I got my engineering degree. I graduated in 1987.
Okay.
So I did that forever and ever, different iterations, different companies and things. I got my ND in 2001. So I've been doing the
Okay.
holistic work almost 25 years now, 24 going on 25 years now.
Wow. Now, I
Yes.
I want to,
And
and I know we got.
if they're doing the math, look.
Yeah.
Like if they're doing the math, I just turned 60. I just turned 60 in March. So there we go. Put it
Oh,
all
nice,
together.
nice, nice. Let's celebrate the 60, right? Because every day above ground is a good thing. No matter the
It's a
age,
good
and respect
day.
God for being here. I'm telling you.
Indeed.
And it just means that you
Indeed.
have a wealth of knowledge and experience that actually you can add tremendous value to people like you're already doing. So, but listen,
Yeah.
we got so much terrain to cover here, Lynise, and but I want to park here for just a second because I've seen this a lot. Now you were in a lucrative career as an engineer, and
Yes.
and somehow the paycheck was just not enough to keep you in that career, and there was some other pull that was drawing you outside of that engineering career where you had the prestige that come with the job, you had the, I'm sure, the stresses, but you had the paycheck also. And I've seen this so much, right, throughout my career where people are in jobs that they're not well suited for. And perhaps they got there because because of the money. I know I've taken jobs because of the money and then got there and just,
Yeah.
I just wish I had made a different choice. But what I wanted to ask you is relative to the job and how you were able to transition out of that. You said that you were absent of fulfillment. And at what point did you notice that you would just no longer fulfill and it was more work on your part just to show up every day?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was a lot like burnout, like we're going to talk about. It wasn't like this flashing moment, this one concrete sort of a thing that happened. I wasn't in a meeting or driving to work somewhere. It was a really quiet, slow path. Um, and because that life of stress, and not that everybody doesn't have stress, every job comes with it, it just comes with the territory, but the level of stress, the level of disconnection, it was really insidious because you didn't pay attention to it at first. With some, it's a bad Monday, it's a bad day, it's a hectic Friday, um you know and just over time, it just got to be more and more pronounced until really one day I just said to myself, like, this is draining the life out of me.
Right, right.
And I just realized, I became self-aware. And this was before I had gotten into the holistic medicine and kind of understood some of the symptoms of burnout, the things that are preceding the actual, like, oh my gosh, there's a woman down kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking back, I can recognize it, but yeah, it was just a slow disconnection from things that had once really excited me. I got a degree in this stuff. It was once really exciting to me, and it was just a really slow peeling apart from what I thought that I loved. And it just became routine. Small things about it became just difficult. It was taxing. Yeah, and then one day it got to a point, honestly, and that's when I think some of the first round of burnout happened, and I didn't really even know what it was. Like, it got to the point where, just like physically, like, I just felt like ill when it was time to go to work.
Yeah,
um
yeah. See,
yeah, it was, but yeah, it was a slow burn. It didn't just like show up one day like, "Ugh, I don't like my job
gosh.
anymore." Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
I'm listening at you, Lynise, and this is interesting. This is interesting how God works too, because I'm listening at your story. And again, you and I kind of do some of the same work in that wellness space. But
Mhm.
as you described your symptoms and your process and this gradual, it's not like, it happens overnight, but it's a gradual chipping away to one day
Yeah.
you wake up and you barely have the energy to get in the car to go to work. And you've done it like hundreds and hundreds of times, but you get to a point where it becomes even more difficult over time to keep doing it. And, I've been in a
Yeah.
career myself and I felt that same thing. And I felt it and didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it. I was like, man, why am I tripping? What's going on? Why can't I just just muster up the strength to go, you know, and the same task, the same responsibilities that I've had for decades that I used to do in this industry, they
Yeah.
became like so cumbersome to perform. So
Yep.
productivity decreases and
Yep.
you just feel fatigued. Now, I bring all that up because I want you to perhaps drill down as our discussion evolves around breaking this cycle, right? Especially when it comes to
Mhm.
burnout. But some people couldn't identify, like myself. And maybe can you talk more about that? How can you identify or put your finger on the fact that you might be experiencing burnout?
Mhm.
Because see, when it happened
Yeah,
to me, I didn't know
absolutely.
what it was.
Yeah, same thing. Now I can look back and go, "Oh yeah, I see the trajectory. I see I was going down the path." But at the time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was actually going on. And so I think that's one of the things that hopefully I can, help people with, you can help people with in the work that we do is having that self-awareness that you are on that path, right? That because
Yeah.
burnout is a continuum. And everybody is on the continuum somewhere, even if you are at the beginning of it, right? Which the beginning of that burnout continuum is excitement, right? It's the new job, it's the new project. I'm all in. I want to do my best. I can't wait to get a hold. Like that's part of the burnout continuum because you have that level of excitement that can be a little bit draining, right?
Mhm.
And so part of it I think is helping people to develop that self-awareness to know that it doesn't just go from 100 to 0. I'll say the other way, right? So
Right.
like
Right.
everything's great and then one day you're just burned out. It really is a continuum, a slow burn of things. So there's the excitement in the beginning, which is good, right? And then there is this place where you sort of settle into whatever it is you're doing, the job, the project, whatever it is you're doing. And then, that's when people are like, hey, how's it going? It's like, oh, same stuff, different day, right? So now
Right.
things are starting to get a little mundane. It's the routine. You're in the routine of it, which is okay, right? It's fine. But each one of those stages, and there's like 5 stages to burnout, each one of those stages is a place where you can recognize how you are responding to your environment, your situation, and go, oh, okay, I see how, work is getting to be super routine right now. So maybe this is a signal to me to reconnect to the things, remember why I'm doing this, right? Reconnect
Right.
to purpose, reconnect to values, making sure I'm doing that. Because if you don't, then you start to go down, further down the path and you get to this place of now I'm starting to feel disconnected. And
Mm.
again, if I'm not paying attention, I'm just feeling like, meh. And then all of a sudden I'm looking for another job. And then the challenge with that is you take yourself wherever you go, right?
That's right.
And so then you start job hopping
Yep.
because the next job you're still going down the path, right? And you end up in the same place and you want to blame the job. Not that jobs do not contribute significantly to people's burnout, right? Which is something we don't talk about is a lot of times when we talk about burnout, we put the onus on the individual. Like this is something you should be able to fix. This is something you should be able to manage, which is true. There's certainly things that we can do to protect ourselves. But one of the things that we don't address are the systemic drivers of burnout, the environments that we work in, and how that also contributes to burnout in organizations for people as well. But yeah, I think it's learning to be aware of how you're showing up, how you're responding, how you're feeling, and what that means about where you might be on the continuum so that you can employ some strategies so you don't go all the way down the path of burnout.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff because that I think a lot of people, especially in today, today's world that we live in, they are experiencing, high levels of stress, obviously, that just comes with living, period. And today's
Mm.
world. But then when you get to work, the environment there, the culture there, maybe adds a new dimension to that stress or more to it. And I know that you work with a lot of high achieving professionals that have high demanding jobs. When you're actually talking to people about how to break this cycle, because you said something that I want to make sure that we are aware of. Sometime quitting the job, you think it's the
Mm.
solution, but if you haven't understood why you might be quitting the job, you'll take yourself to the next job and you'll repeat
Right.
and rinse. You go back through the same thing again. And this is why you see with some folks, the average, I guess the average tenure is about 2 years, 2.5 years on a job before they move on to something else. And you wonder why there's so much attrition and why people are just up and leaving and going to jobs. And I think what happens is work stress, burnout. And the key is that you thinking to yourself, well, when I get burnout, I'm just going to leave the job and go to the next job. But you go there and you keep
Right.
doing the same thing. And so you think the job is really the problem. So I want us to, because you said a lot in what you just mentioned there earlier. What would you suggest for folks to help break this cycle, this evolution of going through, these same levels of burnout, and it's just something that you continue down this path on? How do you suggest they break that? No
Yeah.
awareness, you mentioned
Yeah.
that already.
Yeah. And that's really the key, I think, is paying attention to yourself and how you are feeling. And I think another key with burnout as well, certainly in my experience and in the experience of people that I work with, I hear this to be very common. So a lot of times when we think about burnout, we think about the physical manifestation of it, right? I'm tired, I'm fatigued. It's a kind of a fatigue that is not resolved by a good night's sleep, by the weekend off, by a long vacation, right? You are tired to the bone. It's a
Right.
different kind of
Right.
fatigue. And a
Right.
lot of times when we think about burnout, that's what we think about. Like, I don't have the energy to do many more. I can't move. In my experience, what I have found is that sometimes that physical piece of the burnout is kind of the last piece, right? And there've been other things that are happening
Mm,
that
mm,
we don't attribute to. So again, there's what I'm gonna, and so a lot of the work I do, I focus on what I call personal energy optimization, right? And I feel like there are these energy wells, these wells of energy that we have, everybody's got them, that we can nurture. And when we don't nurture them, when they're out of balance, those are some of the things that lead to burnout, right? So there's that physical energy that is nurtured by food and water and sleep and movement, right? That's
mhm.
the easy one. It's a tangible one. But oftentimes in that burnout continuum, as I shared, I really think it starts with what I'm going to call is that misalignment, that disconnection. I think that starts with, again, what I'm spiritual energy. So again, not religious,
Mhm.
but being connected, being led by your personal core values, right? So when we talk about like, I'm feeling disconnected from work, I'm not feeling the excitement, I'm not feeling the engagement with my work. A lot of that is because we are not connected to our values and not able to live through our values and bring that to work. So not just like I know what my values are, they're on paper, but how am I living it every day? How am I able to live those things out, bring those to work, inform what I do?
Right.
I honestly think that's where the burnout starts. That's what that disconnection is. But again, who told you that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
knows that's really what's going on.
Yeah.
So then you have that happen, and then we start to see the erosion of some of these other energy wells. So there's the mental energy, right? So now I'm not connected to work. My spiritual energy is out of alignment. And so now my mental energy begins to get drained because every decision is just like, oh my gosh, one more decision. I have decision fatigue. I am in the grind and I'm doing it. I never look up. My brain never gets a chance to rest. I'm mentally fatigued, right? All of that starts to happen. We're moving down that burnout continuum. So now my
Yeah.
emotional energy, right? So my physical, spiritual alignment is off. My mental alignment is, my brain is just overloaded with information all the time. So now my emotional energy, because I'm not finding joy in what I'm doing and I'm working so hard and working so long because I'm grinding, I'm hustling, all the things that people are doing these
Right.
days. I'm not taking time to just find some moments of happiness for myself. So now my emotional energy is drained. And while I'm working so hard and working so long, and I'm draining my physical energy because I'm not eating well. I'm not taking the time to eat sometimes. I don't remember when's the last time I had a drink of water. I'm sitting at my desk all day, half the night, 10, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Sometimes I'm sitting, so I'm not moving. And I think I'm being a hero because I'm only sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night.
Right.
Right. So now there's this erosion of all of your personal energy. And, what I tell leaders is if what I'm describing is the life that you're living, I'm not going to doubt that you are a leader, but what I'm going to submit to you is that if this sounds familiar, you are not as effective as a leader as you think you are or as you
Yep.
can be
Right.
because you can't be at your best when all of those things are dwindled and drained. You can't be. I don't care
No,
what you think is going on. You can't be at your best when your mental, your emotional, your physical, and your spiritual energies are not being nurtured properly.
no,
You just
I think I think you put it so eloquently there, and it really it encapsulates how we end up in burnout, because as we talked about burnout being this gradual process, right? What happens is it's sort of like having a leaky bucket, a bucket
can't.
with a hole in it, and so you have a small leak in your spiritual alignment, core values. There's a leak there, but you don't realize it. But every day you show up and you're losing some from that leak,
Yeah.
that bucket. And then you look at the mental as well. I mean, again, these categories or these areas are certainly areas that we have to pay attention to because we can be affected. Like, for example, showing up and your joy for what you do is gone. Now you have a leak in that bucket and the emotional bucket there, right? So when you start to have this progressive, slow drip, so slow leak in these areas, then eventually it starts to accumulate. But you can't really see it all at once, but it starts to accumulate. And before you know it, you crash and burn
Yep.
because you haven't addressed these buckets, so to speak. And I'm so glad that you were able to present this in such a way that our audience could really digest this, because I think we have to pay attention to these areas. And let's back up for a second, and I wanted to ask you about this.
Hmm.
If you could give me some examples. Let's take the spiritual side as far as the core values are concerned. What's
Sure.
important to you, your value system? Can you give us an example of an area or something that that you could correlate this to in the workplace where we're misaligned and we're losing energy? We have a leak in that area. Maybe give us an example about that.
Sure. And again, I think that spiritual energy, those core values really underlie and drive everything else. So in the workplace, it shows up. Oh, let's see. Let's say you have core values of honesty and integrity, just to pick on something, right? So the way you start to realize that there might be some dissonance, some disconnection there, is you're finding yourself saying yes when you want to say no, when you know to say no.
Mm,
You're finding yourself making strategic decisions, long-term decisions with short-term thinking.
mm,
So you're just trying to like put this fire out today, and you're not really thinking about the consequences of, how this is going to go, but you just want this off your plate, right? So things like that, how you're making decisions, what's informing your decisions when you are going along, when you're doing things and it just doesn't feel right in your gut,
yeah.
but you don't speak up, and certainly, in business, every decision is not being made to keep me happy, that's for sure. Right? It
Right.
doesn't work
Right.
that
Right.
way. But you silence that part of yourself that even wants to question or get a better understanding of, why we need to go down. And as leaders, sometimes, we are the folks who are driving that. But it's like, what are we driving from? Where are we sitting when we're driving and making those decisions? So I think those are some of the ways that it really shows up. Again, you're saying yes to things when you really want to say no to them, or you're making decisions when you need more information, but you're just feeling like you just need to make that decision. So, then again, you've got to look at those values of honesty, of integrity, and go, am I bringing that to this decision? Am I bringing that to this conversation?
Right.
That I'm having with people, and really, really start to examine that and question whether you are living your values, or are you moving, living, behaving, showing up in a way that is not aligned with who you think you are. Because then what you begin to split, right? You begin to
Right.
split, and you are this person when you go to work, but then maybe when I go home, I can be my real self.
Yeah.
It's like,
Uh,
yeah, no, there's
that,
only one of you, right?
right.
So which one of y'all is the imposter here?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's interesting, Lynise, that you mentioned that, because let me give you an example. I think that may speak to this, that perhaps folks can relate to this. It's and I've had this to happen to me, because I've been in the sales industry for decades, and in that industry, you get a chance to see a lot of people who are willing to compromise their integrity for the sake of a sale.
Mm,
And I remember having a situation where I had upper management, and this is doing a meeting with other salespeople to say, hey, we need to increase our fees, and we need to increase our fees without justifying why we need to increase them. It wasn't because we needed to increase them because of, budget or whatever the case may be, just trying to hit some revenue goals. It was based out of greed. And let me give you the example of what I'm talking about. I remember a salesperson, the sales manager saying, hey, sell the customer this particular product at this rate. And if they balk at that rate, then you can work your way down. So what they were basically telling us is that the value of the product was not at the rate that we were selling it.
right.
But they wanted to see what they were doing was in a subtle way that didn't sound like it was dishonest on the surface, is they basically were telling us to see what you could get away with.
Right.
Just see what you could get away with and go as high as you could go. And what happened is that the way that it was presented, the way that it come across, if you're in commission sales, you're like, okay. But the salesperson knows the value of the product. They know what the fee structure should be. But this is an example in my case where I've seen this firsthand, where there's a great possibility that your integrity may start to erode
Mm,
in a subtle way. And you do this because of money, and because it seems to be what the environment says that you should do. This is what's being preached from your leaders. And so what happens is that if you don't have this self-awareness, going back to what you mentioned earlier about your own personal integrity, you have to be cognizant of that, because the environment oftentimes that you find yourself in on certain jobs may be counterintuitive to that. Just like in sales, like I said, try
Right.
and get more from the customer than what the product's worth. And then before you know it, you start cutting deals, or you start trying to do backdoor deals and all this other kind of stuff, because that subtlety there will erode other areas in your life if you don't address it. But it's just something, as you was talking about, I was kind of remembering having run across that. I've seen a lot in sales. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot, just a lot but you have to have, as the individual, that integrity that says that when you go home at night, you can lay your head down and say, you know what? I charged the customer what the product was worth,
Right.
and I delivered it to them in a manner that I had a spirit of excellence about it, and I didn't overcharge them because I could. I charged them a fair price.
Right.
And so that's something personally you have to adapt to. But I see what you mean, because if you don't address that, there's a leak. It's a small drip. Your energy starts to leave, but you don't know why. But after this, you consistently find yourself in these environments, and you keep doing these things, you will see your energy erode, or
Mm-hmm.
that you're out of alignment, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, absolutely. It's funny you talk about sales, and I feel like I've never been in like a sales, particularly like a sales commission type of, had that type of a job. But I feel like what you're talking about, again, whether people give it that name or not,
Right.
is probably a reason why a lot of people leave sales.
Yeah.
And again, they might not name it what we're talking about, but it's
Mhm.
that gut, that feeling in your gut that just like doesn't go away. And I
Yeah.
think, I imagine what could happen is when you find yourself compromising your values. And again, if you aren't aware of your values, and I'm talking like every day, post-it note, put it on the wall somewhere so
Right.
you see them, right? If you aren't even aware of what your values are, if you can't name them, then it makes it a little challenging to know when you are not in alignment with them. And then I think it becomes a slippery slope. So, like in the example that you're talking about in sales, right? When I begin to normalize this thing of getting as much as I can and feeling like, yeah, that's all right. I'm doing my job. I'm making the
Right.
sale. I'm getting the big commission. How does that begin to spill over into other parts of your
Mhm.
life, into other relationships that you have when you begin to normalize that thinking of, get before I get got,
Right.
get all that I can out of it. I imagine, again, I've never been in that sales kind of a position from that mental framework, but I imagine, like I said, it starts to spill over into other relationships. So now, you're not only looking at your professional world, but if you're having other relationships that are falling apart, is it because you're bringing that same kind of mentality, to the
Yeah.
table? I don't know,
Yeah.
but it certainly can spill over into other things if you're thinking this is my normal way of doing.
No, you're right. You're right, and I've seen that happen. I mean, the story that comes to mind that I was just talking about, the sales manager who was basically advocating for this, his life was a wreck.
Mhm.
It was a wreck in other areas. And after, when you're working with someone for a while, you begin to kind of get to know them and stuff, and so you could
Yeah.
see that there was some other areas that he was having some problems in, but it's those managers or quote unquote leaders that I've seen throughout my career that I guess put this burden on my heart to teach people how to lead from a servant position.
Mm,
Because see, these people that I was accustomed to working with, most of the time, they didn't understand what servant leadership was about. They didn't understand what it meant to help help develop and add value to the team that you're leading.
mhm.
It was always the needs of the leader, and these people were just there to take care of the needs of the leader. But it should be, in my opinion, reversed in the sense that we, as the leader, we are there for those that we have charge over to add
Yeah,
value, to help develop, to help instill fairness, equality, making sure that people are treated the way that they should be treated. But all of that comes from the top. It comes
yeah,
from who's orchestrating the show. And so we gave the correlation there with the bad manager scenario and what he was doing and the fruit that was being produced from that. You were having your sales reps, they were just leaving by the droves, and you had to keep hiring because they kept quitting because of this environment that
right,
leader he set up.
right.
He had this, that type of mentality. So it's interesting that, we're talking about this because I think it's so vital for people to understand that no matter where you find yourself at or what job you're on, that you have to identify, like you said, your core values. What's important to you?
Yeah,
I mean, is hard work a core value? Is, stick to itiveness and treating people fairly? Um, you know, is that something that's important to you? Because
yeah.
certain environments, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I was talking to someone a couple days ago, and just again, kind of about my journey and how I got here. And, that person asked me, like, how has my view of leadership changed or evolved as
mm,
my journey and my life has changed or evolved? And I said, yeah, once upon a time, I thought leadership was all about, making the numbers, being productive, the
right,
KPIs, all,
yeah,
all of that kind of thing. And you just harness the team and let's go, let's go, let's go. But now I think I realize as a leader still that leadership it starts with me, right? So good leadership
yep,
always starts with self-leadership. How am I leading myself? And that really is based on these things that we're talking about. I always tell teams that I work with, if I hired you, I trust you know how to do the job. So I'm not here to babysit you. And, there's maybe some things you need to learn because you're coming in or whatever, or, things are evolving in the company, but I trust you're good at what you do. So that really is not my concern. My concern as a leader really is to model these things, right? How to be effective. So I want you to see me leading through my values. If my value is about kindness, am I being kind? And I don't mean just being nice to people.
right,
Am I being clear in my communication? Because clarity is kindness, right, with people.
hmm, that's right.
Ambiguity is not fun. It ain't nice. It ain't kind, right? So, are you seeing me model these things? Are you seeing a leader who is taking the time to take lunch, right?
Mm,
Is not just sitting down all day long and saying, hey, let's go for a walk and talk about this. It's important we get up, get some fresh air, get some sunshine, right? Am I modeling these things for you? Am I modeling and saying, I know we have this really important decision to make, but it is 4:59. My brain is shot. I really need to step back. Am I, because implicitly I'm giving you permission to do and nurture yourself in that way. And when you see me do it as a leader, right? I'm leading you and you see me doing it and showing up as my best self. I'm giving you permission to nurture yourself in those ways so you can show up as your best self and do amazing things at work, right? If you see me, I've worked in organizations, I've worked with organizations and leaders where honest to God, people don't go to lunch because
yeah,
they're looking and like the leader's door ain't opened all days. And if they ain't moving, I'm not
right,
moving.
right,
I recently read a story about this guy and he was new, executive at a company, and first, couple of weeks or whatever, and he was just saying to his wife, wow, the people that work here are so loyal. Like, I'm trying to get up to speed with everything. So I'm here until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And like, they are here. They are like right here with me. And the wife was
Yeah.
like, do you think it's because of you? And he had never thought about the example he was setting. So one day, 5 o'clock, he got in the car. Hey, everybody, I'm leaving for the day. This is great. And when he left, he didn't go. He just sort of went around the corner and like everybody was leaving at 5 o'clock. And he was
Right.
like, oh my God, I think their loyalty, they're just watching what I do
Yep.
and going, it,
Yep.
like you said, it's coming from the top down. If this is what the leader's doing, I'm not leaving, kind of thing. So we don't realize the influence that we have on the people that we lead. There's studies that say that the person your direct report, the person you report to, has a greater impact on your health and well-being than even a lot of the things that we're talking about because of the model and example that they set for you. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
leadership really is about setting that example of, yeah, having work integrity and doing the work and doing a good job, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But it's also, how do I show up as a person, as a leader, so that I can be amazing at what I do? I'm not just
Yeah.
amazing because I showed up at the door. I want to show you that so you have permission to do the same thing and show up and be amazing too.
No, that's so true. That is so true, man. I tell you, the thing is that keeps folks like us, and these busy is the fact that organizations are finding that productivity is decreasing,
Mm-hmm.
turnover is increasing, and there are gaps that exist within these organizations that are tied directly to leadership and the culture that leadership is setting. And I'm going to give you another example because I love stories. And the buckets you're talking about, because you're talking about energy driven leadership here, and we're
Yes.
talking about these
Yes.
buckets, right? Where you talked about the spiritual piece, and we talked about the emotional, mental piece, and then obviously there's a physical component to this. Now, let
Mm-hmm.
me talk about the physical component. The physical component is something that we may not really realize that's important to addressing areas where there may be a leak in your bucket, or there may be, you may not be properly aligned.
Right.
Because we're talking about wellness, and we're talking about wellness from a holistic standpoint and its impact on leadership. And we know that leaders, in order for them to lead effectively, there needs to be energy, and we see that work stress, all this stuff that we've been talking about, burnout, those are things that we see are in areas where we perhaps have some misalignment.
Mm-hmm.
Again, management, this manager um, was, he was severely obese. So he was a really big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he would come to work, and when he got to work, what he would do is primarily stay in his office, sit in his office, and most of his day was consumed around food.
Mm.
Like what are we gonna eat for breakfast? Like, what do we got going on for breakfast? And you know, do we have the coffee? All this stuff. Like, he would get to work and be talking about this stuff. Like, should we have donuts tomorrow? And I'm like, what are we, bro? What are we talking about here this early, right? And so, lunchtime. Hey, Bobby, where do you want to go to lunch at, man? We should try this new spot. And I'm like, what new spot are you talking about? And I was like, nah, I don't really eat that type of stuff. He was like, man, you should come, man. So you go from lunch. He's consumed about lunch before lunch gets there, and then he's thinking about dinner before dinner gets there. So
Yeah.
he starts to talk about dinner and what he's going to eat for dinner. So this is what his day was. And the reason why this individual is prevalent in my mind, and this has been years and years ago, is
Mhm.
because he was misaligned in the physical aspect. I mean, he was overweight. He didn't have the energy. There were days that I would see him in his office and he would be sitting at his desk and he would nod off and he would be, he was
Mhm.
asleep.
Mhm.
So what was happening is the people that he was over was seeing this. It was like, this guy don't care about production. He don't care about anything. He just wants to know, what are we going to eat?
Mhm.
So what happened one day, his boss comes in and says, "Hey man," he said, "the numbers have been off. Your numbers have been off." And he says, "Hit the door. We got to let you go." He got fired on the
Oh, wow.
spot.
Oh,
Yeah, he
wow.
got fired on the spot. The team, me included, we didn't get fired, right? But what was happening was this guy had modeled such poor leadership from a physical standpoint. His
Mm.
appearance was horrible.
Yeah.
He was unkept. And it reflected in the productivity of the team because the team didn't see it from him because it wasn't a concern for him.
Right.
And so therefore a lot of times perhaps they wasn't as focused on what they needed to do in order to bring the deals in. But you mentioned about that physical piece not being aligned there. Now, I got so many stories as we're talking about this. I can think about it's, it's just amazing that you brought this up because this stuff we don't even realize that's affecting us that we don't even know that's happening, right?
Yeah.
But the point is that when you are taking care of yourself, proper diet, exercise, and making sure that you spend time, dealing with the physical aspects of your life,
Mhm.
then you show up as a leader at a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Not only do you show up with the energy that you need, but you also show up. And that energy is kind of like it shows up in other areas like productivity and getting things done. And it's actually something that is contagious because now your employees say, "Hey, you know, like now with me, right? I think I told you when you and I talked, I had lost like 100 pounds,
Mhm.
like years ago, right? Few years ago, and my energy level now is through the roof. So what I've noticed is this: I have influenced people that are around me
Mm.
to take better care of themselves because they see me taking care of myself. So it goes back to what you're talking about alignment and leadership and the influence that we have over folks.
Yeah, it's so funny where this conversation is going. So I'm just actually in the process of writing an article. I post blog articles on my website
Mhm.
monthly or every few weeks. And I'm in the process of writing this article, working on an article that talks exactly about this, about living in your alignment so loudly that you awaken that purpose and that alignment in other people, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the
Yeah.
task of leadership, right? Living in alignment, nurturing yourself, living that model so loudly that other people are influenced just merely by your presence and what they see you doing, and they want to get aligned and nurture themselves. And I mean, that's leadership to me. That is
No, you're
so
right.
core. That is so core to leadership. And, it's funny when you talk about that leadership model and what they're modeling, and you look in organizations that are having a lot of challenges with retention and attrition and what do they call it now? Presenteeism, when people are
Mhm.
there, but they're somewhere else mentally,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um, and look, because you and I have not gotten to enough leaders yet to help them understand this
Yeah.
thing, right? They're struggling. They're trying to figure out, why can't I attract people? Why are people leaving? What is going on? Okay, let's change the work hours. Let's give them more money. But like I said, at some point, money is not the
That's it.
motivator. So
That's it.
this is now where you've got to look at yourself, that top down. What is my C-suite modeling? What are my executives modeling? What are my senior level managers modeling? Because somehow you don't think you're part of the problem.
Right.
And maybe, just maybe, there
Just
could be other
maybe.
things going on without question, but just
Yep.
maybe your folks are part of the problem to
Yep.
be addressed. And the part of the problem is they are modeling something that is just not sustainable for the people that
Yeah.
are working.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can't, I've had managers who, their model was, I have the expectation that every week you work 60 to 70 hours a week. That when I email you on Sunday at, you know, 11 in the morning, I expect you to answer, or on a Saturday, I expect you to answer. And then you wonder why people are like, yeah, I don't want to work for that person,
Right.
anymore. It had nothing to do with, it was what that leader was doing, and the leader didn't see themselves as part of the problem. So,
Yeah.
you know, you
S-
folks out there that are having these challenges with attrition and
Yeah. You
retention and
see.
attraction.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right, Lynise. This is the thing that, and I'm so glad we're on this because I know that there's a lot of businesses out there that are struggling with these. I know personally that they're struggling
Hmm.
with these issues. And so what they try to do is instead of addressing the real problem, they feel like that if they throw more money at it, like you mentioned, if I can just increase salaries, then, that's gonna solve the problem. I could attract more people. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work long term.
No.
You still have the same cycle with folks that are leaving in spite of the increase, in spite of the money that you're offering.
Yep.
And it seems that there's this apprehension in some organizations to address top down to bottom, meaning the managers that are overseeing these teams, they feel for some reason that it's more difficult to address them than it is to just, find another body to come and take the place of
Right.
somebody that just left,
Right.
right? And that's not the case because I've seen that some places have folks that are in leadership positions that are not leaders. They were promoted because they were great working in the accounting department, or they were fantastic as an administrator, right?
Hmm.
And they just excelled in some other department. And so now you have them where they're leading people, but their natural gifting and skill set was not as such to get into this position. Now you have them out of alignment.
Right.
so,
Right.
so they're
Right.
yeah, they're out of alignment, right? And then the same thing with the people that they're trying to lead. And so I think that this is a really super great discussion we're having. And I tell you what, I haven't even gotten to like the other questions that I because we
Right.
it's how you're in a good discussion because it is so vital that we talk to and try and address these areas that you mentioned. And let me give you talked about the mental piece, like showing up to work and your joy is absent, no longer feeling, this enthusiasm about your work. And again, there's a leak in the bucket. The energy is seeping out and it's doing it in a slow manner, but nevertheless, there's a leak. Now, how would you suggest for leaders to deal with that area if they are in that position themselves where
Hmm.
they're leading, but they realize that they are absent of joy? There's some mental and emotional challenges that they're dealing with. What would you suggest that they do?
Yeah. A couple of things. So I think a lot of times, again, because of the cycles that we are in with work, working so much, working so long, working so hard, when we find ourselves in the absence of joy, oftentimes it's not just at work, right? It's everywhere. Because when I get home, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted at work. Like I'm not even just finding those moments personally or professionally where I'm just at peace and just loving life. I go on
Right.
vacation and I'm taking my laptop and I'm still thinking about work, or I don't take the laptop, but I'm thinking about, oh my God, all of the stuff that is going to be waiting for me when I get back. So I'm not even enjoying that, right? Because I'm
Hmm.
still mentally, I'm somewhere else. So in part, I think, again, it comes back to those core values and your ability to recognize when you are able to live them out. I think that brings you joy when you know, when you can feel good about, yes, I made that decision from a good place within myself. That makes me feel great. Yes, I had that very difficult conversation, but in a way that was kind and
Right.
nurturing, and I listened. I didn't just come in and feel like I had all the answers. I treated this person as a human, as a person, and not just a problem to be solved. That makes me feel good, right? So, it's not necessarily cartwheels down the hallway every day,
Right.
life life and jobs come with stuff.
Yep.
But again, as I said, those core values and being able to live them out just influence so much of those other energy buckets. I think that's one of the things that you can do, again, is if you're not finding the joy in the job, right? I'm going to call it, like, sit with that for a minute. And
Hmm.
why not? Why are you not? What is missing? Where is the disconnect? Go back to those values that they're in there somewhere, right? But let's bring
Right.
them to the surface.
Right.
Let's bring them to the surface and
Right.
go, how am I showing up being this person, right? Because we are human beings, right? We spend a lot of time doing,
Yep.
but who am I?
Right.
Outside of the titles, outside of, all of the hats that we wear, am I showing up being the kind of person that I want to be, that I know I am? And again, the disconnect is when I show up as somebody other than that.
Yeah.
And showing up as myself brings me joy, brings me happiness. Right.
No, you're 100% right. You're right. It's the imposter syndrome that
Mm,
zaps us of energy. So it wreaks havoc on us
yeah.
because it's more work to be something that you're not
Yeah.
than to be something that you are organically and naturally. And again, this is so powerful, the stuff that you're sharing. I'm serious because it's
It
taking me
is.
back
I'm
to like,
bubbling over here.
yeah, yeah. It's like taking me back to like real life situations where I'm seeing this because when you have a team, let's just say as a manager, you have a team of people, they have varied personalities. And I remember leading a team of 9 people for a large corporation. I had a small team. I was a team lead. And I remember that this team comprised of very different individuals. They had different values, different skill sets, different personalities. And what I realized I needed to do, and this was just something I did organically, right? Because I wanted the cohesiveness and the unity within the team, but I realized that I had to lead and touch people from an individual standpoint when it came
Mhm.
to addressing issues or having to deal with challenges, but I had to know them. I had to understand who they were
Yeah.
and gave them the freedom to be that without
Mm.
trying to make all 9 people fit into a box
Mm-hmm.
that and I realized in order to do that, you have to spend time with the people that you're leading so that you can know how to maximize your leadership opportunities with them because
Yeah.
people respond different because they are different and you want them to be different because if they're different, they're bringing an element to the team that's necessary for us to get the football across the goal line. And that's all we're trying to do is get the
Right.
football across the goal line, right? But we
Yep.
need all 9 players to participate, and they all got different positions. So as you're talking about this alignment and you're talking about these things that drain of us of the energy, I recognize how important it is for us to make sure that we are spending time with the people that we're leading So we can look at them from the perspective or get to say, hey, well, Susie is high strung. She's a outspoken person. So as a leader, I may have to work with her a little differently than
Right.
John. John's quiet. He's an introvert. He likes to, stay to himself, but he's super analytical. He's great,
Yeah.
can produce, but she's outspoken. She's all over the place, but she's a great person. But I got to deal with the outspoken part.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's the beauty of leadership,
it is.
is galvanizing and leveraging the strengths of the team
Right.
and allowing them to be themselves. Because, see, that's how I am. I don't want to be put in a box
Right.
as a leader. I don't want you to, go get a job and you have to try and make me be something that I'm not. I'm Bobby 24 hours a day.
Right.
And so that's the thing that I try to share with folks that I'm leading is just letting them be their authentic self, as opposing to try to make them fit into this box. Because if I do that, I'm losing this energy that you're talking.
Yeah.
It's being lost. It's not
Yes.
only from my side, but from their side as well.
Right. Right. Absolutely. You're just making, oh my gosh, the most amazing points, right? So one of the things you're talking about, and it's funny how we talk about this, but I'm seeing it in a whole different way with our conversation, right? So one of the things we talk about is recognition and how important that is. But a lot of times when we think about recognition, what are we thinking about? Giving them the kudos.
Yep.
You did a good job, high
Yep.
five, right? But maybe something to consider, maybe recognition is what you're talking about, is actually seeing people for who they are,
Yep.
getting to know them outside of, did you get the job done? Where are you on the status of this project? It's recognizing the individual, their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities for growth, and how do you as a leader leverage that on the team, recognizing, oh my gosh, recognition now, a whole different thing. And
Yeah.
even when you talk about imposter syndrome, right? A lot of times when we're thinking about imposter syndrome, people think about, oh, I've been promoted to be the pick a thing, the CEO, the leader
Mhm.
of whatever. And we feel like imposter syndrome is about maybe I don't have the skills to actually do this, right? And I'm up here and I'm putting on the face, but inside of me, I don't feel like I'm actually equipped. When maybe another perspective, right? Maybe that imposter syndrome is me realizing I'm in this place and I'm not showing up as my authentic self, so I feel like an imposter.
Yep.
Maybe that's what it's about,
Yep.
coming back to that alignment, right?
Yep.
Maybe that's
Yep.
really what's underlying that imposter syndrome. It has nothing to do with my skill set or,
Yep.
sure, you can learn new stuff, but maybe it really doesn't have that much to do with the skill set as it does. I feel like I'm in this position and I can't be myself.
That's right.
So I have to be an imposter.
Yeah.
Wow. Light
Yeah.
bulbs going off.
I know, right?
Oh my gosh.
so, so for our listener audience, guys, that folks out there that are going to be listening to this telecast, you need to make sure that you get in contact with Lynise. She has unpacked today some things that I've never really heard quite this way, put this way in terms of leadership and these areas of life that we deal with between work stress that leads to burnout. And if you're a leader out there in charge of, a team of one, team of two, team of 20, team of 50, doesn't matter. The things that we're talking about today, I think are just awesome value adds to helping you be more effective because, Lynise, what you did today is if you've simplified this in such a way that you can eat some of the bite-sized chunks of this, right? But you didn't know why. For most people, they don't know why they're feeling this. They don't know where the fatigue's coming from. They don't know
Right.
where this discontentment is coming from. And all they see is that something's going on, but I can't figure out what it is. But this wellness approach, this holistic approach to dealing with your mind, body, spirit, your physical aspects of your life is so paramount to being an effective leader because we operate off of energy. And I like the way you put this. You talked about personal energy optimization.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh, that's it. It's
That's it.
it's why we're feeling drained.
That's it.
It's you're feeling drained. Now here's something interesting. Let's think about this. You and I have been on this recording for that should have been about 40 minutes. We've been on for about an hour and 15 minutes, right? Now, guys, again, we're taking what's been given, and we're going to give you some examples. So you and I have been on for over
Right.
an hour. It's no way that you and I could have been on for over an hour if we were not into something that was giving us energy.
Right.
It's, this gives us energy.
Yeah.
And this is how you know you are properly aligned in this area, because the work that you're doing, as opposed to zapping you of energy, it seems to somehow gives you more energy. And so as you and I have been talking, such a great conversation, I just looked up. I'm like, wow, we're already at an hour and 15 minutes. I didn't even know it. And I still haven't gotten past the first question.
I know. But what you're saying is spot on. Like, we could do this all day.
Yeah. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
amazing. I hadn't even got past the first question. So, but let me ask you about this. Your work in terms of the audience that you serve.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about the audience that you serve? Because I know there are a lot of women out there that are in very demanding and stressful jobs. But who's the target market for you? Who do you find that benefits the most from what you do?
So my target market is really people who are people leaders, right? So it could be all the way up to the C-suite, your executive VPs. It could be mid-level managers, which I think there's something special in that place for mid-level managers, because they are really they're sandwiched between meeting the needs of the people above them and supporting the people
Right.
below them. So that's a really interesting and unique place to be in an organization. I love working with women because I relate. Oh my God, talk about another hour's worth of conversation. I
Right.
relate, I relate so well to the challenges that women leaders experience very differently than men leaders
Yeah.
experience, because of societal and cultural norms and expectations about what leadership is, what it looks like, how it's supposed to show up, how you're supposed to show up, and how for a lot of women that just immediately creates misalignment with who they are as individuals. But yeah, those folks that are people leaders, that are high performing, that do love their jobs, that realize at one point in time, like, I really love my job, but something's going awry here. Or they are normalizing or have normalized being exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, being disconnected. And they're at a place where they realize something different has to happen.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not exactly sure what, but there's got to be a different way. Like, those are the things that I hear from people that work with me, that seek out the kind of work that I do. And also, you have some leaders who are developing that awareness. They are seeing some of these challenges in the teams that they lead. And so they bring me in, to organizations to do trainings, workshops, retreats, that kind of thing, because they're seeing the challenges in their teams, and they're seeing these, what I'm going to call these personal things are impacting productivity, innovation, creativity. And it's like, we got to get a handle on this. We have to approach what we're doing differently. And so then I come in and do consulting and training for, organizations at that level.
Okay. All right. So you spoke about women and some of the different challenges that they face. Can you tell us more about that? What are some of the things that women
How
are
much
seeing?
time do you have? No.
Just give us the edited version.
To edit that. I give you the Reader's Digest version,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah. So I think kind of summing up, right, some of the unique challenges that women have in leadership roles. One is that the embodiment of leadership is really defined, I'm going to say, by male energy, right?
Mhm.
Very assertive, very outward, very extroverted, kind of energy, where feminine energy is something very different, right? It is more allowing, it is more nurturing, but when women step into leadership roles, we often feel like now I have to be one of the boys, right? I have to,
Mhm.
work is hard. I need to learn how to, and I will say this with a bit of caution, right, for the listening audience, right? As a woman, I don't necessarily have the luxury to compartmentalize.
Wow.
So we bring and carry a lot of the burden of emotional labor that men don't carry the same way. And I'm being speaking a little generally here, right? Broad stroke, but when a guy goes to work, he goes to work and he goes to work and he thinks about work and thinking about work, right?
Right.
When I go to work, I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about my kid. I'm thinking about the dentist appointment. I'm thinking about getting
Yeah.
oil changed. I'm thinking about,
Yeah.
oh, I got a church meeting tonight. Like I'm thinking about all the other things. I don't have the luxury to just set it all aside and only focus on work because I'm also keeping my family afloat, right? And
Right.
not that men don't contribute to that. I don't
Right.
want to,
Right. Right. Right.
say that, but they don't contribute in the same way that women do.
That's true.
They don't contribute in the same way that women do. And so I don't have the luxury to compartmentalize and just forget about everything else going on because
Right.
I'm at work, right? If something happens with the kids, they're calling me, and I can't just look and go, "Oh, that's my kid's school calling. I'm not picking that up." I don't get that choice. So, I'll go a little like super super personal here. Even in our rhythms as people, for a long part of our lives as women, we experience a monthly rhythm that
Yeah.
really wreaks havoc on our energy, on our
Yeah.
focus, on but you know what? When I go to work, nobody cares about that.
Right.
So guys don't have to deal with that. I am expected to show up being 100% every day of the month, right?
Mhm.
And frankly, every day of the month, I'm not 100%,
Mhm.
simply because I'm a woman and there's no taking that into account. And so again, I have to shove all that to the side and be like one of the boys and just suck it up and go do it.
Mhm.
I am not living in alignment with who I am. And so
Wow.
helping women to navigate some of those spaces, right? We talk about work-life balance. There's no balance. This is a crazy thing to think again, like work and life are two separate things that live on the other side of some scale.
Yep.
And, it's harmony. It's about how do these things integrate well um, together because they're not separate. So helping women to navigate some of those spaces and realize it's okay to navigate some of those spaces. How do I advocate for myself as a woman in those spaces? How do I create boundaries? Ooh, that's a bad word, right? But how do I create boundaries? And this is for the guys too with the boundaries.
Yeah.
How do I create boundaries for myself at work, at home, that are not meant to be walls to keep people out, but they are meant to be things that help me to support my ability to be my best self. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
women in leadership spaces, they have a lot of things that we deal with that, men don't, that they don't have to consider.
No, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, you hit it right on the head. I mean, and the thing about men from their perspective, from our perspective, because again, I'm listening at you, and this is true enlightenment. It's enlightenment, but it's also right in front of us, but we don't see it sometimes. That going back to what we were talking about earlier, people are different. And if you are in a leadership capacity, you have to get to know the folks that you are working with, because now
Right.
you just highlighted some of the challenges that women face in the workplace and also in leadership capacities. And this brings more awareness to some of the things that they have to contend with that most men don't. Because, like you said, we go to work and you ain't thinking about all that other stuff that you just mentioned. It's not something that you focused on. You just focus on, the job, whatever you got to do at the office or whatever. And for the most part, that's it. But like you just used the illustration about you get a call from school. Most of the time, mom's gonna go handle that. You know what I'm saying? That's it. So you're thinking about all those things. We go to work. We're not thinking about most of those things that you're
Right.
dealing with. And we have a different framework of thinking, a different mindset. And it goes back to just say again, we're different. We're different. There are different things that we bring to the table in addition to bringing different sets of challenges
Mm-hmm.
to the table that have to
Yeah.
be addressed, not by trying to put everybody in a box, but they have to be addressed differently in some cases. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I think that's so great that you highlighted that, and the challenges that women are facing, because maybe for them a lot of times they don't have an outlet. They don't know how to express or where to go to get coaching or get any type of help
Mhm.
regarding the challenges that they're facing. They just got to feel like they need to be a part of the boys club. And
And
it
just
goes
muscle
back.
through.
Yeah, just try to muscle through, and you going back to the imposter syndrome again. You're not your authentic self because you can't be, or you're choosing not to be.
Yeah.
And when you're not your authentic self, doesn't matter where you're at, what job, what situation you're in, you are going to lose energy and edge because it requires more for you to be something that you're not
Yeah.
than to be yourself.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely
so
so.
yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, and I'm so glad that you got a chance to talk about the differences. Now,
Yeah.
your consulting practice, tell us more about it, and how can our folks get in contact with you? Do you do assessments? Just tell us more about what you got going on.
Yeah, absolutely so. So the consulting practice, Workwell Strategic Consulting, again, working with organizations, we come in and do a what I call a organizational wellness maturity assessment. Really trying to understand where wellness sits in your culture, right? We always talk about we've got this culture of wellness. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Chances are you don't.
Right.
Um, and so we work with organizations to help them figure out from a cultural perspective how to reframe wellness so it is not this stovepipe bolted on thing that HR people do that they really don't
Right.
want to do because they have their own jobs to do, right? And to really position wellness as an operational strategy, right? And not some siloed program over here. Not that the programs aren't important, lunch and
Right.
learns and challenge, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's important. Education is important. Um, but helping organizations to really figure out how to position well-being as an operational imperative.
Mm.
So definitely the consulting, works with organizations who are ready to kind of make that move from a cultural perspective, but also coming in and doing those sorts of team level, executive leadership level assessments to understand where your leaders are. Again, at being energy driven leaders, you said that's actually one of my frameworks that I
Yeah.
work with, and helping them to be energy driven leaders to understand where they're leaking, right, and how to plug up some of those leaks so that they can lead more effectively, and so that they can again model that for the people that they influence, for their circles of
Yeah.
influence. Yeah.
That's good. That's good stuff. And the vital work that you do is really tied to the bottom line. And sometime I'm glad you talked about, because there are a lot of companies that have wellness programs, but they're siloed, and
Hmm.
HR has to administer them, and it's like, ah, go get your wellness checkup or whatever, you know.
Right.
And so they just got it over here to the side. But they don't realize that wellness is all about productivity.
All about.
It's all about it. It's all about that it all translates to the bottom line. Cause see,
Yep.
today, what we have been able to talk about has all evolved around productivity, because that's the one thing that suffers from out of all of this misalignment that we're talking about.
Right. Yep.
The leaders are not only suffering from lack of productivity, which translates to this, right?
That's right.
The employees, because they are misaligned in some of these areas, they too are experiencing this. So it's a well-rounded economic impact, and it should be addressed from an operational standpoint,
Yeah.
because it is a part of operation.
Absolutely. The analogy that I use when I talk, when I try to give people a visual. So I've worked in higher education before for several years. And if you think about the way a college operates, right? Some colleges may have student wellness programs, right? A lot of colleges don't, but some may. But if you just think about the way that a college functions, a university functions, everything about the way that university or college functions or operates is there to support the well-being of those students, right? So you've
Right.
got financial well-being. You can get a loan, you can get a grant, you can get work study. You have physical well-being. You've got a place to sleep, you've got somewhere to eat, you've got intramural or varsity sports to get you moving. You've got mental well-being, right? You have counselors, on staff. You have intellectual well-being because you're there to get an education, so you're learning, right? Everything about the way a college operates is there to support the well-being of those students, but you don't call a college a well-being program,
That's right.
right? So when you take that same process, that same thinking, and you begin to lay it down on top of an organization, then your wellness program really becomes an operational perspective. So if the folks in HR, if the folks in payroll come to their work understanding that their job is to support the financial well-being of their employees, that's different than I'm just trying to get payroll out,
Yep.
right? I have a different mission, a different vision, a different something that underlies the work that I do. HR folks who are are in charge of talent development or, succession or things like that, right? They are there for the career well-being of people, the intellectual well-being, if it's talent and development, professional development kind of things. So when people come to work with this different operational perspective, that's how you build a culture of well-being in the
Mhm.
organization, when everybody sees how their role in the organization supports these different aspects of well-being of the employees. Then when the employees see and feel that, then you will, I believe, begin to get the engagement and the participation in your I'm saying little, I don't mean that, but in your little siloed,
Right.
wellness program. Because what happens is, and this again is another project that I'm working on. What happens is, I'm going to go back to some of my engineering work, right, or academic work, and I think about if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of
Mhm.
needs, right?
Mhm.
So a little triangle that says the basic stuff has to be met first.
Yep.
So physical needs, psychological needs, right? Needs for connection, all those sorts of things. And then at the very top of the pyramid is all the self actualization, the be my best self. The challenge with most people's wellness programs is they start at the top of the pyramid, right? Because every wellness program is like, be your best self, eat
Yep.
your best food, manage your stress like a pro, exercise 5 days a week. That's self actualization. When I am worried about paying my bills, getting my kid,
Right.
ain't nobody thinking about
They think about that.
ain't nobody got time for that. But that's where the wellness program starts off. So when the organization can operationalize well-being and people see that those what I'm going to call those lower hierarchy needs, it's not, and I get it's not the responsibility of the organization to meet those needs, but they certainly have the ability to support some of those lower pyramid needs. When people see that the organization is helping to support those needs, they'll be ready to manage their stress better and eat better because those other needs are being met. But until that happens, yep, you're just going to keep looking at your wellness program like, why is nobody coming? Why is nobody participating?
Yeah.
Because that's the consulting I do. That's the work that the frameworks that
Oh
I
my
bring.
God.
Yes.
Yeah, that is so refreshing that and you so on spot. I mean, you're on point with everything you just mentioned. Because it's why the wellness programs with a lot of organizations, they're just efficient. You know, they're not inefficient. Rather, they're just not really connecting with folks, and you find that even the participation now in a lot of those programs, they make it mandatory in order for you to get, some type of benefit or something like that. Not because
Exactly.
you
Yep.
want to be a part of it. You just want the benefit.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yep.
If the other needs are not being met, then that piece that they're talking about is just like going through one ear and out the other. I mean, great analogy, really, really great, right in your face way for the present what this should look like to an organization, because I think that until they begin to think differently about wellness and well-being,
Mm-hmm.
that you'll still continue to try and fund these wellness programs that a lot of times are not even being a lot of folks are even participating in. So you're kind of throwing good money after bad, so to speak.
Yep.
And you're not seeing it translate to productivity going up. You're not
Right.
seeing it translate to, you're just saying, oh, we got a wellness program, and that's part of your recruiting pitch.
Yeah. But
And
what is
that's
it doing for you, really?
right,
What is it doing
right,
for you,
right.
and what is it doing for the employees? Not
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, man, that's good stuff. That is good stuff. So as we're gonna have to eventually shut the session down.
okay,
At least,
fine.
oh my gosh, we could keep going, man. This has been a
We'll
really,
have to do it
really great.
again. We'll pick up
We
next
do.
time.
That's a part two, because I haven't got out of my first question yet, believe it or not. So
Oh my God.
we still got more questions for you.
All
But
right.
before we get ready to leave, I always like for our guests to just give us some parting words of wisdom to our audience, and things that
Yeah.
you would like to share from your heart that could add value.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the thing that I always want to leave with people, again, we've talked about a lot. We covered a lot of ground today on question number one, right? But if any of this resonates, if it sounds familiar, if it's you, if it's your spouse, if it's your coworker, if it's your friend, there's a couple of things to know. Know that
Mhm,
we see you.
mhm.
We have been you, so I get it. I know where you are. I've felt it. The circumstances might be different. The feelings, what you're experiencing, you are not alone. And I promise you, there's a different way. Right? I'm not going to say better, right? Because I'm not here to judge one way or the
Right.
other. But I promise you, there is a different way to go about how you choose to show up for yourself, for your family, for your job, for your employees, where you don't have to sacrifice your health and your well-being to do the things that you love to do. You don't have
Oh,
to do
that's
that.
it. That's good
Um,
advice.
yeah.
Great advice. Great advice. I love it. Love it. And listen, I forgot to ask you, by the way, you got a couple of books that you got a book that's coming out, right? Or is it
I
already
did
out?
have one book I wrote, oh my God, a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I'm working on another one that really goes into this energy driven leadership, and this idea of optimizing your personal energy in order to be an effective leader. I'm still playing around with working titles and all
I
that
got
kind
you.
of thing, but
I got you.
whew, writing a book, put one more thing on the plate. Like,
There you
yep,
go.
okay, girl. Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna
Yeah,
happen. It's
yeah,
a
me and
work
you
in
in the same
progress.
boat.
Yeah.
We in the same boat. I have a book coming out hopefully next month. It's
Okay.
been a yeah, it's but it's been taxing. As you already know, I mean, it takes time for you to really pour into you know, a book to really get something out that's pretty good. But
Yeah.
yeah, I got one coming out next month, and I'm excited to be able to, have this platform for great folks like yourself to be able to come on. And today you bought an incredible amount of value. And I say that because before the value can be disseminated to the audience, it has to hit the host first.
Mm,
So when it hits me, I know that this is going to impact other people because, a lot of the things you shared today, I believe is going to make the difference in people's lives and help them better manage stress and burnout and some of the challenges that they're facing right now. Because we all got them.
yeah.
We all got them. They're here, and
Yeah.
you have to
Life is
find
life.
what. Yeah, yeah, life keep life, and right. So you gotta navigate, and part of that is just making sure that you take time to address your wellness and your well-being as an individual. So, Lynise, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I have
Yeah.
enjoyed our session today. And folks, I appreciate you all tuning in also. And hopefully you'll get a chance to reach out to Lynise very soon and perhaps take her up on some of those assessments that she offer. And I'm sure you guys are going to get a lot out of this telecast. So thanks again for tuning in. And until next week, you guys have a good rest of the day. Take care.
All right.